I can see the live chats and all the things that are going on there. Make sure that's turned off. This is a big rigmarole. I need to find some more fluid way to do all this, because I can't start them both at the same time. But anyways, this is our second edition of What You're Working on Wednesday, but this time it's actually on a Wednesday. So hanging out here at the home office on Wednesday. I try to take Wednesdays off and get the curriculum built for all the patron guys. And see, that's what I'm talking about, all that weird stuff. Anyways, looks like it's YouTube's going. It's all live and the things with the interwebs. Hey, Manuel. But so last week we gave away I gave away what was that thing? A Zed Bull Mini and William Hughes won that over on the Patreon channel, so that's cool. Congratulations to William. He is a pipe fitter by day who's starting out working on cars. Next week, I got another tool to give away. I got to make some videos on it for these guys that are giving me these tools. Got the Launch Creator 3008. Let me see here if I can get this to pop up. Hey guys, got the new level, of course, is first to pop in. Thanks to Fazio popping over into the YouTube platform. Oh, Leon's in there. Budget Legit Garage, and so is Voltage Drop Diagnostics, and dang, all you guys are in there. Sweet. Well, so we're going to be giving away the Creator 3008 sometime next week after I make a couple videos. This is a pretty good sized tool. It's just a generic OBD2 scan tool. It's got some battery reading functions. I don't think it has any battery test built into it. I've really hooked it up to one car so far, so I've got to make a few more videos on it. Send that over to those guys. And then I have two other tools that I'm not giving away because I have to give them back. I have to either give them back or I got to pay for them, one of the two. So I have the Launch Diagun 5, which some of you guys have already seen in other videos. I actually have had this for quite a while now. I made this video for the distributor of this tool that shows them updating and registering the product, so that's on their page. I'll probably make that video live pretty soon. Brian says, this Wednesday I'm working on my self-esteem. Let's see. And then Matty Mechanic over on the YouTube platform says, from Pakistan. That's awesome. I'm glad you could join us. What time is it in Pakistan right now? Somebody figure that out. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get rid of some of this housekeeping stuff before we do the What You're Working On when I can help everybody out. Also have the Autel TS608, the TPMS tool. If I can bring up my broadcast stuff, see if I can get that to focus there. The Maxi TPMS 608. It's their full, they call it the comprehensive TPMS tool. So supposedly it does all the things with all the stuffs. So got that I'm doing a video on and working on that. Got that all figured out. You'll see some stuff on that pretty soon. Because I normally would not have even wanted to do anything with the TPMS tool because I don't do tires. But it has quite a bit of their diagnostic suite built into it. I'm updating the tool right now, but I don't know what it does in comparison to like the 908 that you see me use. But we'll see. New Level says he's getting serious lag. No telling. I've been having some issues lately. All right. Then rest of housekeeping. Big thanks to Scott Brown. I talked to Samantha at the Diagnostic Network booth at Vision in Kansas City, and I wanted some stickers, some of the blue, because I saw some people had some blue stickers rather than like the white ones. They were clear back, so it's like a vinyl where you can put just the blue Diagnostic Network letters with the D with the little waveform through it. And she didn't have any, so she said she was going to ship me some. So in the mail, I got this nice little handwritten letter, which I greatly appreciate handwritten letters. It's awesome. It says, Keith, I couldn't find any clear stickers. Maybe these are better. Thanks for being a member, Samantha Diagnostic Network. And then with that handwritten note, I got a notepad that it came on, which is kind of cool. I love notepads. That's one of my main advertising things. Like when I buy advertising stuff, I predominantly buy like notepads and pens. I do some flyers and stuff too, but you know. And then in it, I also got a steel cup, which is kind of cool. I got a little diagnostic network flashlight with batteries, even better. I got a twist pen that's nice with a stylus on the back. Heck yeah. And in Oklahoma, we call these chip clips because, you know, you can close a bag of chips with them. You roll it up and then... Because in Oklahoma, with all the humidity, if you don't put a clip on your chips, they're stale and nasty in, like, hours. Lived in Colorado for a little while. That was not a problem. Leave a bag of chips open all night. Next day, eat some. It's fine. Let's see. But anyway, so big thank you to Scott Brown and Samantha over at Diagnostic Network for all the work they do and the cool stuff they sent me in place of stickers. So to answer your question, Samantha and Scott, yes, this was better than stickers. So I dig it. Plus, I'll probably just have the wife use her Cricut machine and make me one however I want, as big as I want. Hopefully no copyright infringement there, Scott, but I'm going to take some liberties with it. So, alright, we covered the Diagun, the Autel TPMS. We talked about the Creeder. I'm making some videos with that, and I'm going to give that away over on Patreon. The reason I'm giving away over on Patreon is because the rules there are a little more lax. I can run a lottery or whatever they want to call it. DeFazio says Autel is a dirty word. Needs to wash his fingers after typing the name. Alright. So, let me go back to questions on there. So, today I'm working on a 2011 Ford Transit Connect. It is not my Transit. My brother-in-law just bought one for his plumbing company, and it needs some work. So, I'm actually packing today to leave tomorrow morning, first thing, 6 o'clock flight to St. Louis, from St. Louis to LaGuardia, and I'll be in New York for TST. So that's what I'll be doing. But today, I've got to get some housekeeping stuff done. I got to do this. I got the Patreon stream tonight also. Normally it's on Sunday, but we're doing it tonight. I had some technical difficulties Sunday, and then I'm not going to be able to do one while I'm in New York. Most likely I won't be able to, so we're going to do that tonight. So all the Patreon guys, you already got an email with the link and all that stuff on doing that. We're going to do Nissan Advanced Programming Part 2. We're going to cover that. That's separate from the J2534 class on the online version. The in-class version is going to cover that in the class. That's going to the advanced programming for Nissan is in the actual J2534 class as it's written. There are 3 versions of that class currently out there as it changes as the industry changes. So it's a live class. It's an organism, that class is. So with that, there is the announcement. Dave Wagner put it on diag.net, so I guess it's okay to say I will be teaching at Super Saturday in Pennsylvania. There are some people that have already seen that. Sorry, I need to stop reading comments because I get sidetracked. But I will be teaching the J2534 8-hour course, all-day class. If some of the other stuff comes through, it will also be not a live car class, but a hands-on class. As long as I can get all my setup shipped to New York, and I've got a buddy helping me out who I graciously will thank, and he's got some major props in the class. I'll mention him when we get that all worked out and stuff, but I've got some live modules and benchtop setups. I have my benchtop set up from here. I'm going to ship as much of that as I can to Pennsylvania. So during Super Saturday, whoever takes the class, we're also going to do some live flashing. You get the opportunity to do some CSV file editing for Nissans, and we're going to do some, we're going to work some magic on some used modules and go through that. So we're going to have the classroom portion and then hands-on flashing if we have time. If not, then I'll make time. We're going to do some kind of hands-on flashing if possible, if I can get all that worked out. But at least the 8-hour portion of the class will be there. I'm going to be teaching that full day at Super Saturday, so big thanks to Dave Wagner. And my sponsor for that class is Autologic, so big thanks to Autologic on sponsoring that. But that will be a full day event, and that's Super Saturday, so go to PA. I'm going to give the website name wrong if I don't just look it up now. But it's the ASA Pennsylvania So the website to go to is paautotraining.com. So PAAUTO training.com. And that's where you can get registered for Super Saturday. So that's coming up after TST, which is in New York on this Saturday. Both one-day events that are fantastic. All right. Now, I'm done being sidetracked. There's a couple questions in here. Rudy says, I'm still having problems with my power steering Hydraboost on an 04 Chevy. When I turn left to right, I lose brake pressure, but after putting it in neutral and revving it up a bit, it comes back. Could it be forming? I think he means foaming up too much, or do I need some sort of different proportioning valve or something like that? Rudy, if I'm not mistaken, this is on the International Scout that has an 04 Chevy setup, right? If I remember correctly. But it could be foaming. It looks like you probably are having a pressure issue, but I would start with verifying that if this is the one that's the system that's put onto the International Scout, I would start with checking to make sure the lines are correct and not backwards, because a lot of funky stuff happens when pressure lines are switched on Hydraboost setups. Dealt with some issues on some Mustangs with that. And then it could be foaming. You can use, in those systems, to see if it is foaming, you can attempt to use Type F transmission fluid just as a test fluid. It is a little thicker and has a lot less foaming properties than like the conventional Dexron fluid that most people put in there, but it does call for a clear hydraulic power steering fluid is what you should be using. But if that's foaming up too much, try some Type F transmission fluid and see if that helps. If that does, then yes, you may be looking at a foaming issue or aeration where the system is not bled well, but I would start with looking at that stuff. And then don't leave the wrong fluid in there for any period of time. I'd use it for testing purposes, but then you need to flush it out and put the correct fluid in. How is the graph capability in changing min-max values on Diagun? The Diagun does not allow you to change the minimum and maximum scaling values like the Autel does, where you can change the scale where you only want to see 0.1 volts to 0.8 instead of 0 to 5. The Diagun does not allow you to do that, but it does allow you to change a minimum and maximum threshold for alerting you. So if you're looking at like a misfire monitor, you can go to graph, set min-max, set maximum to 1, and then at the moment that it actually catches a misfire, it will make a buzzing noise and alert you. You can also link your Bluetooth headpiece to it, and then the audio will come through your Bluetooth headpiece. So you can leave this thing sitting in the car or with you or whatever, as long as it's within Bluetooth range of the dongle, and there are multiple Bluetooth adapters in here, so you can do headset and to the car. Which point, when it starts to misfire, you'll get an alert, so that way you can deal with an intermittent misfire issue. So that is cool. The min-max feature on the Diagun is for that. It's for a threshold. It's not for the scaling. How many of you guys are working with Bosch ADS tools so far? That would be a question for Keith at New Level Auto. I'd go check out Keith DeFazio's channel, New Level Auto. Many more subscribers than me, way more content. He likes to keep his videos to about 3 minutes. And he wears a much cooler hat, a Kangol, which I have one, and every once in a while I wear it. And I'll bring it to New York, Keith, and we'll wear our Kangols together. How about that? All right. He says I'll be able to do a live stream from TST, but I won't be able to do my like 1 hour plus patron stuff, Keith. Let's see. Whoop. Missed some stuff here. Don't want to miss that. Thanks, PJ, for the congrats on that. PicoBoost says, co-worker's doing some ignition scoping on the Pico right now. Well, Pico post up some Facebook stuff. Put some... Brian Lyon says, I got this Monte Carlo and I can't get the key to learn. Somebody replaced the cluster while it was running. Have any tips for me? Well, a winky face. Brian Lyon says that because I went out to Brian Lyon's shop yesterday. And another shop had sent this car to him, and he was not interested in working on it, understandably, because he knew it was going to need some programming stuff. What had happened was a 2007 Monte Carlo, for whatever reason, this other shop decided to switch the cluster while it was running, at which point the vehicle shut off and never started from there, and that was a year ago. The vehicle has seen a few other hands, some of which I was told did some cutting of some wires. I get to the car, I have no power at the DLC, but I have power at the display fuse within the fuse box. I have 12.4 volts, which is the voltage of the new battery that was just installed. Graciously, Brian installed a battery for me, so I didn't have to work on a car with a bad battery. And any of you guys that are mobile realize that is a huge deal, because half the cars we go work on have completely dead batteries. So I go out to the car. It's got 12.4 volts in and out of the fuse. I go over to the DLC, which that fuse, display fuse 10, goes to a splice pack that's underneath the dash. The splice pack splits off and powers the cluster, the HVAC unit, the DLC, and a few other things, just with a comb similar to a Class 2 data network for GM. I'm trying to make this story as short as possible. Anyways, pull the comb, check for power, only 3 volts there. I trace that back and find out there's actually no loss of 12 volts. The problem is on my ground side while voltage drop testing. That's because nowhere in the car, inside of the car, on the dash, on the seat belts, or anything, can I get a good ground, voltage dropped ground. Come to find out, the battery cable, since it had been replaced once before, there was a battery cable that goes over to the engine block, and then the one that goes over to the frame had been replaced with a double-aught battery, double-aught like stereo cable, and had been there a long time because it was actually loomed and electrical taped to the main wiring harness that goes into the car and went underneath the car somewhere. That was not a good ground. So I took jumper cables from the battery to the chassis to add a ground. As soon as I did that, bam, cluster comes to life. Because when I got there, key on, just check engine light comes on, nothing else. No cluster comes to life, nothing interior, nothing. So I add that ground, cluster comes to life, but now I have no comm with anything but the ECM and BCM. Chase down the no comm issue. I scope. First thing I do when I have a no comm is I scope the network and see what it looks like. The high-speed CAN bus looks good. Both plus and minus looks mirrored. About the 2.5 volt, what I'm expecting on the bias voltage. Go to single wire. The pin 1, which is just Class 2 Class 2 style data network. It's just like a J1850 pulse width modulation style communication. So it's 0 to 7 volt square wave usually. I've got 0 to 1.5 volt, but it looks like good clean communication, but it's only at the 1.5 volt. So at this point, I know I don't have a short to ground. I most likely have a communication fault within a module, some module bringing the network down. So I go to Splice Pack 205, pull the comb, use my fantastic U-Isolate tool from AESWave, and start adding modules back onto that network by adding one connector in place of the comb that just shorts all the bus connectors together, like all of them are just one wire spliced together. Instead of doing all at the same time, I do one at a time. And as soon as I get the second module on there, the network is 0 to 7 volts. So I know that I have a module, or at least one leg of that network, bringing it down. Add them back in, bam, pin D is my problem. Pin D, whenever I add pin D into the network, because they're numbered A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, something. Get pin D in there, bam, shorts network down to 1.5. So I leave that one out, put B and A back in. There's no pin in C. Whole network's back live. I can talk to every module. So I go to wiring diagram, Splice Pack 205, pin D, radio. Should have seen it coming. It had an aftermarket radio. The face was off of it, so it didn't stick out like a sore thumb to me. Plus, half the interior was already tore out of this car. It's been sitting for a year. Leave the radio out. Now I got comm. Keys not learned. So that's kind of where we were at. Yesterday I attempted the VTD learn, although GM's AESWave TDS website was down. I was able to complete the VTD learn, at which point I still had a Bravo 3031 code, which is in learn mode. I can communicate with the vehicle theft deterrent module. It can communicate with the BCM. I can talk to the BCM, the PCM, IPC, everything. But it will not learn the code. It's stuck in the learn mode, B3031. So the repair for this, according to GM's flowchart, which you know we hate flowcharts, but you need to look at it at least if you don't really have a test plan. Looking at the DTC set criteria, it basically says that it's in learn mode and that code will clear once it completes learn mode. So I attempted a manual 10-minute learn first, just doing 3 10-minute cycles. Never did the lights turn off, but even letting it go for the 12 minutes, shutting the key off and doing it, even though the theft light didn't go out, it would not complete the manual learn, and then doing the VTD learn through SPS programming, it still did not, so I'm going to have to call for a vehicle theft deterrent module. So Brian Lyon, you know, I told you yesterday, that thing needs a VTD TDM module, or PK3 module as it's called sometimes, but it's the theft module that goes around the key before we continue. It does appear this steering column has been changed, so by somebody else. Brian has not worked on this. He has no idea what the issue was. He knew that it was going to come down to programming and didn't want to mess with it, and that was a good choice, Brian. That was my kryptonite yesterday. All right. Voltage Drop Diagnostic says, I believe the town is called Warminster. That is correct. It's in Warminster, Pennsylvania, is where the Super Saturday training event on October the 12th will be. Full clip, got a ragged out RX-8 with half a body kit on it in the shop. Just replaced a bad fuel pump, got it running. Big blue cloud behind it. Guess the customer got a heck of a deal. If you got smoke, you probably have worn apex seals. You can do if you have an in-cylinder pressure transducer, is the easiest way to see, because a traditional compression test, since the rotor design on a rotary engine, a traditional compression test usually won't allow you to see a single worn rotor, because each one of the rotors is 3 compression chambers there. You have 2 options. You can use a conventional compression test gauge with the Schrader valve removed and use your smartphone. If you can download some free video editing software and slow it down. You can actually see the peak compression needle sweep for each cylinder. You want to make sure that it cranks at approximately 220 RPM or more. That's important on a rotary engine. Cranking speed is vital to getting a good compression number. But if you have an even cranking speed and you're watching the needle sweeps and you've got one that comes down lower than the other, you have a very worn apex seal. If they're all low, then you just got worn apex seals conventional. Then if you have a pressure transducer, it's very easy to see because you can just map out all of it and see each rotor and kind of check them. But if you have a variance of more than 10% per rotor, then I would say you have some internal work to do, which if it's an RX-8, it's probably already had an engine installed under warranty, and then if it hasn't, they have a free motor coming. If it has, then if it's had about 80,000 miles put on it, then it already needs apex seals again. It's pretty common. Let's see. Is that why my Mini Pro beeps at me? Maybe I should read the instructions. I think he's probably talking about the min-max stuff. Let's see. No problem, Rudy. So I'm trying to catch up. PicoScope says, oh no, they got me a Dorman transmission pan for the ZF transmission. Thanks, Corey. Telling everyone to give the thumbs up. And then I get a bunch of thumbs up emojis. That's neat. Losing connection, he says. Oh no. Let's see if I'm... Yeah, it's showing I got a slow connection speed. It's probably pretty choppy. Should be coming back now. Shows I'm uploading it over 6 megs a second now. I hope so. Alright, hopefully that'll help. I hope so. There's no telling though. Yeah. Definitely having some connection speed issues. Dang. Well, guys, sorry about the technical difficulties. Unfortunately, I mentioned yesterday to the wife that we should get a faster internet connection, and she said, you said that a couple months ago, and we have the fastest internet connection available in our area. That is depressing. That's what kind of get out in Oklahoma, I guess. But what other stuff do we have going on? Surely someone got a kick out of that. Yeah, Brian, unfortunately, we're not done with that thing. I mentioned to Brian there at that shop, he needs to attempt a used theft deterrent module, and usually doing the 3 10-minute learn, even on a used salvage yard theft deterrent module, it will start the car, but you'll usually have airbag codes. B1001 will come up for an SDM Well, I hope that's better. I'm showing I had dropouts on my end too, so it should have stopped for a second and came back. I restarted the streaming software. It says I'm streaming much faster now, so hopefully it's better. Where was it going? Anyways, I did recently have a SSR. You guys familiar with that? It's like usually have a Corvette style drivetrain and a little car truck looking thing, similar to like a Australian Commodore Ute or something. That's what it looks similar to. I'm not sure where the chassis was based off of. But I had one of those that we had done a BCM install that I had to get a VCI programming number for through the help desk, through GM help desk, due to part number consolidation. That's a long story on its own. But anyways, I had a B1001 when I was done. The VTD learn failed, and I assumed because I had the VCI for the BCM, I would have to get a VCI for that too. So we did, but the car started and ran, no problem. So once they put it all back together, they let me know that there was an airbag light on, and if you read the service information, which you guys know I'm real big on, it says that you must complete the VTD learn through SPS. It says do not attempt a manual relearn. And my assumption was that if the B1001 is there, and this is, in GM's service information for the B1001 set criteria and such, it says that the VTD learn has to be done. So in some way, the theft deterrent module learn being done correctly is tied to the SDM primary key configuration between the BCM and the SRS module. So you need to follow the service information is where we come down to. Keith says, oh, it looks like he's having a conversation with someone else. Let's see where the Facebook world is at. My phone shut off. Nothing. Nobody watching. That's good. We'll probably stop doing the Facebook stream because that complicates things. All right. Hey, Pedro. All the way from Puerto Rico. Hanging out with us today. That's awesome. Says his compression is actually good. I guess we're talking about the RX-8 still. So that's interesting. If you've got a big old cloud of smoke and your compression's still good, then you guys can laugh all you want. I had my hand in some rotary modification back in the day. I got my introduction to the automotive diagnosis world by doing engine tuning. I started as a DIY guy with 300 ZXs. The twin turbo 90 to 96 was my car. I recently have sold my last one that I had. I've had one in my possession that I'd owned since 2007. I've always had a twin turbo 300 ZX. That was my thing that I was into, and that's how I got into the automotive industry, was tuning those cars and getting in and then working in machine shops and all that stuff. But anyways, it's your stream. You teach them. I wasn't even paying attention to the conversation, Keith. But I got into that by tuning stuff, and during my time of tuning cars and stuff, you get into a lot of different crowds, and the RX-8 crowd, the rotary crowd is one of them. So I did enjoy working on RX-7s. I've done rotor installs. I've done swapped out crankshafts to do a 3-rotor build before. I've done some full engine rotary rebuilds, apex seal replacements on a ton of them. It's really common the design just allows a lot of wear. Well, to prevent the wear that normally happens, we get rid of the oil control valve, the oil and control valve system with a block off plate and such, and then we just go to a 2-stroke mixture of the fuel. So it is a common thing to do because the oiling system does fail a lot. Craig Terrell, you got into working on cars before I was born, if that's the truth. But that is something that is done in the RX world, in the rotary world, in the Wankel world, whatever you want to call it, is 2-stroke mixing, and that does prolong the engine's life significantly by adding that extra lubrication factor there. So that's something, you know, it's there. It's a thought. If it's smoking, maybe look to see if the oiling plate's been blocked off and he's running a 2-stroke mix. If he's, you know, if the car, like you said, it's got a body kit on it and stuff, so it's totally possible. Okay. Let me get in here, Keith. What do we got going on? Mr. Bauer. Why did I get a great ABS pattern on a 2-wire system with 1 wire almost broken half, but it won't OMG out at all? Won't ohm out at all, maybe? Maybe that's what he's saying. Keith says, when I say Keith, I'm not talking to third person. I'm talking about DeFazio at New Level Auto. He's a buddy of mine. How much resistance does it take to make an AC signal look bad? You just make me realize a teaching item. Correct. Said, so how does a module read an AC signal? Or does it read it as AC at all? And Vincent says magnet makes its own signal. It's close. Depends if it's like a variable reluctance permanent magnet style sensor, because you can have PMVR, one sensor that's both PMVR, permanent magnet variable reluctance, and some newer style ones are PMVR 2 wires. Okay, can a module read on AC signal? Then he says, then he antagonizes me. Keith says, come on, Perkins, it's your stream, you teach him. Okay, they need to know how a module reads an AC wheel speed sensor. Computers can only read 1s and 0s, right? Then he says, Perkins! Okay, so now I'm caught up. All right, so when a module interprets an AC signal, it's interpreting the cross of a voltage threshold. So it's data plotting, like he says, 1s and 0s. There's the 1s and 0s thing is a term that's used a lot. But I want you to expel that from your mind, because that's on the programming level. And I don't mean programming like module programming. I mean on the base firmware and software level of the module. Is 1s and 0s is that communication. That's what protocol's done. I want you to just imagine that the module is plotting the voltage as it comes in, okay? And it's drawing a picture. Modules don't look at voltage like we do on an oscilloscope and see the pattern. It doesn't see this pattern. It is monitoring voltage as it goes up and down, but it doesn't get to see this as a picture and look at it and go, well, that looks bad. It's simply looking for a specific setting, a specific voltage, and it's going to set a threshold. And it's going to monitor the voltage and say, okay, currently it's above this threshold of 0.15 volts. Okay? And it can monitor alternating current. That module can be both alternating current and DC coupled. Okay, so it can see both voltages, just like there's multiple voltages inside of a module of just direct current. Most cars have multi-voltage systems. I know we don't think about this. When I say multi-voltage system, some of you guys are going, oh yeah, the new Audi with the 48-volt electric supercharger system. But that's, cars from almost the inception of modules had multi-voltage systems. We have a 5-volt system in there. We have a 12-volt system. And that's traditionally what we've had. Some of them had bias grounds, which add a different level of voltage difference. But anyways, this module is plotting, interpreting this signal wire coming in and plotting this voltage up and down, okay? And it knows, okay, currently we're above this voltage threshold of 0.10 volts or whatever. And then it crosses. It goes, okay, bam, and it sets a counter. Okay, at X milliseconds of my runtime counter, the voltage went from high to low and crossed that threshold. And then it's monitoring that voltage, dot, 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 dot. You know, these dots are just connecting the dots. It doesn't see a perfect line. It can't see there is a refresh rate in there. So then the voltage goes from low to high, and it crosses that threshold again. It's not really worrying. The resolution down here isn't that big. And then bam, it crossed the threshold again. It says, okay, so between this time and this millisecond of runtime for the module, we had a threshold cross from high voltage to low voltage to high voltage. So it interprets that as that is one reluctance, one tooth or whatever, and it's programmed to know that X teeth or whatever, which most of the time on an AC signal, there's not on a wheel speed, there's not a indicator tooth, there's not a blank spot, because we're not trying to get timing of this. And when I say timing, I mean actual position. We're not trying to get position of that sensor wheel. We don't need to know when the hubcap emblem is correctly faced. We just need to know the distance of the time distance between one tooth to the next, so we can interpret. We know the space is this much, and the wheel size is this much, and the diameter is this much. So this amount of milliseconds of time from one tooth to the next means the wheel is turning at this speed, and that's used as an input for speedometer in some cases, ABS activation, steering, cruise control on newer vehicles. So all of that's important. So you can have a dropout. So it's plotting that number, and it interprets that. And then that's an input, right? And then programming happens in the module. This is where the zeros and ones come in. Hayward's Automotive says A to D converter. Correct. Analog to digital converter for voltages are used, and I can tell you a funny story about one here in a minute. So that input is that voltage signal in. The module is viewing that input, interprets it, and then that's the programming. IPOs, inputs, programming, outputs. So the programming happens in the module, then it communicates maybe with other modules on the network to tell them what it's interpreting, because it's interpreted as AC signal, and then it's converting it to either a speed or some type of data to another module. Other modules may just want to know its actual voltage up and down also. That may be a bust input. And then other modules sometimes will do their own programming. So when you hook up a scan tool and you look at wheel speed, you're not seeing the AC signal, right? You're seeing wheel speed. Well, there's a lot that's happened there. You may be seeing wheel speed from an ABS control module, but the ABS control module is receiving its data from, in this case, I mean, in the case of this vehicle, it's most likely straight to the ABS module or maybe body control even. A body control can get this raw AC input data from the wheel speed sensors and then bust that data to the ABS, and the ABS module does its work and outputs the information to the scan tool as a wheel speed. So there's a lot of possible stuff going on in there. You guys just have to take all that into account. But modules don't see voltage like we see it. It doesn't get to look at the picture and go, there's a dropout. Well, we got a problem with the sensor. It's interpreting that data, and then if there's a dropout, it's going to go one voltage, and then if the next voltage is up, then it's going to interpret that as the car stopped. That wheel stopped moving. So that's why you can get all kinds of weird ABS activations, vehicle dynamic control problems, that kind of stuff. Phil Hallbrook says, what's the newer speed sensors where the flow charts have you measure milliamps of the sensor? PMVRs, you're going to look at current on that sensor, and it's very small amount of current. So I want you to think about the difference in, because Phil, I think we've talked about the difference in like a narrow band or wide band O2 sensor or a traditional zirconia style sensor versus a wide band or air fuel ratio type sensor. To get a specific number of, okay, I'm trying to not go too far into an O2 sensor explanation, which could be an hour long. The short version of it could be an hour long to explain to you another sensor. Current is the work being done to that sensor, right? It's not going to output a voltage type. God, there's not a good way without doing a physics lesson. I'm not the best at taking something and giving it that. Craig Terrell says, can only see with a scan tool. You can see the speed of the wheel speed sensor with the scan tool, but you can monitor the raw voltage inputs with an oscilloscope. A DVOM is useless in today's automotive world, and I mean that across the board. And that's a point that many people will contest. A test light, I feel like, is almost a useless tool. I bought my first test light ever in my entire career like a month ago, and it's already ticked me off and failed me because and I didn't. It's not because I trusted it with the wrong thing. It has its place. Don't get me wrong. A test light has its place. But anyways, the point, I'm getting way off base here. Milliamps, PMVR type sensors. It's not trying to create a voltage output. That's an internal amount of work that's being done on it. So it's, instead of outputting a voltage, there's voltage supply to the sensor, and the amount of magnetic work that's being done to create either more or the more or less speed that happens on that creates a pull down or an amount of work to pull that signal down, which creates amperage inside of it. So it's just a different way of doing the same thing. Wired the Vantage Pro in series with the WSS to see it. Yep, the Vantage Pro is a fantastic tool for that. Phil Hallbrook. Secondly, how do you determine if the module isn't sending the information or if the other module isn't receiving it? Scan data. If you look in, if it is module to module communication in the hypothetical that I gave you, because I really can't think of a car right now that's set up like that. Most of the time, wheel speed sensors go directly to the module. That module reports the information. Okay, so the majority of vehicles that do have module communication with wheel speed sensor stuff is almost every vehicle uses it for, if it's using it for speedometer output. So you may have ABS modules wired directly to the wheel speed sensors, and the ABS module sends that data to the IPC instrument panel. You can look in the ABS module, and while you're rolling, you're getting wheel speed inputs. But then you go to the IPC, and you're not getting any input in the module. I don't care if the speedometer's moving or not. Don't worry about that. That's an output, right? That's a whole nother point of failure there. If you get in the IPC and it's getting reported data in the data stream of the wheel speed, but then your speedometer doesn't work, you're probably looking at just like a bad servo or something in the speedometer itself. The speedometer part has failed. If you're not receiving in the data stream of the scan tool in the IPC, then you're looking at a communication issue between the IPC and the ABS module. If you go to the ABS module and it's not seeing wheel speed data, then you're looking at a problem between the wheel speed sensor and the ABS module. If you have at the back of the module that data and you have no other codes, because that's important, you can have some codes that shut off the ability of a module to pay attention to something. If there's a code for wheel speed sensor incorrect, and you're not seeing data, or wheel speed or incorrect gear ratio, or wheel speed circuit open or whatever, and you're not seeing the data at all in the stream as you turn it, but you're scoping the back of the wire and you're seeing it, that does not mean that the module's bad. The fact that you have a code may stop it from outputting or getting the data because it knows it's wrong. Similar to how Ford and Honda do with calculated or substituted values. God, I got so many stories I can give you for substituted value, but I also wanted to give you the story on A to D converter. I don't have time. Okay. Adrian Lowe's, that's a good example. You can use a test light to simulate a slight load and therefore see if you have a voltage drop issue. Like I said, a test light does have its place, but very, very seldom do I need a 220 milliamp max load put on a circuit. I usually need something more than that. And if that's the point, if you're trying to substitute a load, what's wrong with the load that's already in place of the circuit? Because you can, if it's a load like a bulb you're trying to substitute and you've got power and ground to it and it doesn't work, then obviously it's bad. So why substitute the load unless you're trying to just verify the concern, which if you've done voltage drop, you've already verified the concern. That's my argument against a test light. It's just me. Everyone wants to buy this tool that substitutes a part to check a circuit. Like, just check the circuit with the load in place. I don't know. There's, to each their own. That way is not wrong. A test light is not a bad tool for some people. If that's how you like to do it and you're comfortable doing it, and as long as you're actually voltage drop testing the circuit, more power to you. You are not doing it wrong. I'm not beating you up for that. I'm not telling you you're doing it wrong. I'll throw the guy's name out because I don't care. I'm not a Dan Sullivan. There's more than one way to skin a cat, more than one way to diagnose a circuit. And there are lots of correct, efficient, fast ways of doing it. And if you're comfortable doing it that way, continue doing it. Don't stop. Just personally, the way I taught myself to do circuit diagnosis, it never involved a test light. so I don't use one because I'm actually just not comfortable. Like, it leaves too many unknowns for me. I stab it and the light comes on. Like, is it 12.4 volts or is it 11.9? And does that mean I have 0.8 of voltage drop, 1 volt of voltage drop across this circuit, or do I have none? I mean, the bulb seems bright. That's just me. Sorry. I'm arguing my point again. But anyways, there's nothing wrong with using a test light. Tons of fantastic technicians that are some of the best technicians out there use test lights. So don't stop doing that. Just continue with what you're comfortable with. Just make sure you're voltage drop testing the circuit. That's the only thing I care about. If you're loaded voltage drop testing the circuit with an adequate load, more power to you. Just self-evaluate if it's faster to use the load in the system than it is to substitute the load. That's all I'll say about it. And remember, resistance is not futile. It's voltage divided by current. Sorry, my wife made me that shirt because I love it. Which, there's quick funny story. When I teach electronics, when I teach electrical diagnosis, I never teach Ohm's law, ever. I don't add a single formula about Ohm's law into the thought process. I do heavily emphasize the relationship and correlation between voltage, resistance, and current. But I do not say if you've got this, I don't go over the division and why that's important. You need to just understand the relationship, because, and someone's going to call me out on this and say that I'm wrong because they had to use it the other day for some diagnosis. But I just want to say that I have a pretty good memory, and I cannot remember a single instance where I needed to use the formula to diagnose a vehicle, ever. Now, daily, on every circuit that I test, it's always important for me to understand the relationship between resistance and current and how voltage affects those both. Understanding that lowering the resistance of a stable voltage circuit increases the current in that circuit, and understanding that increasing the voltage but leaving resistance the same also increases current. All that stuff is important. It's important to understand the relationship of voltage, current, and resistance. That is the most important thing of electrical diagnosis in DC or even AC circuits. Okay? But the formula itself I've never had to use to successfully diagnose a vehicle. And I say that and I say never because I can't think of an instance, and I hate using never or always and stuff. But that is what I teach the importance of. And there are other ways to teach it. There are other people that teach you the formula. You understand that, and that is important too. And like I said, I never want to say my way is the only way, because it is not. My way of teaching anything, my thought process is never the best or the only way to do it correctly. It's just my thoughts. But anyways, that's my rant. Right, you guys are all giving your examples in there. Phil says, them formulas confuse me. It's not that they confuse me, it's just that if you asked me to do Ohm's law math right now, I would fail. And it's not because I didn't know it or didn't think it was important. It was because I don't use it enough. It's not important to me. But it's important to other people, and it's used in other stuff. But in automotive electrical diagnosis, I don't use it. I don't use the formula. I'm going to highly stress again, it is really important. It is superiorly important that you have a firm foundational understanding of the relationship of all of those. So there. All right. I'm only going to be on here for 9 more minutes, so I got to say hi to Steve. Mr. Scott, I'm going to see you Saturday. Or no, I'll probably see you tomorrow or the next day, because you're coming in early too into New York, all the way from UK. So whoever, one of you guys, it's like a couple hundred miles away from TST and say you can't make it. Steve's coming from United Kingdom for a 1-day training event. So if it's not that important to you, then obviously you have different priorities than Steve. But I want to cover the first one we talked about. Hayward said analog digital converter. He said A/D converter. 2002, 3, 4, maybe even older. Can't remember the exact vehicle year. Jeep Wrangler. Car comes in. I'm telling you the story. This is the time I misdiagnosed this vehicle. I called for a module that did not need to be replaced. So I'm going to tell you the story because I don't mind bagging on myself a little, and it's an experience that I learned from. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago. Early 2000s, maybe late 90s. Jeep Wrangler 4.0 comes in, throttle position sensor code, comes in from somebody else. They've already replaced TPS sensor, the normal thing. They've done that stuff, and they tried overlaying wires. And this is where I started to misdiagnose from the very beginning. Once I saw that they had overlaid new wires to the PCM from that, I was like, man, they screwed something up. The human factor got in there. And it's totally possible that they could have done something, but they didn't do this. It's a P0123 code, throttle position sensor circuit high, I think. Unplugged the connector, got 5 volts, got ground, both loaded voltage drop test correctly. Plug in the sensor, check 5 volts, still got 5 volts, still got ground. Check the sensor wire, and it's got 7.9 volts coming out of the PCM on the sensor wire. So I was like, doing my normal circuit checks, end up getting frustrated to the point where I actually cut the wire this far out of the PCM to ensure that there's nowhere else in the circuit they've done. And I didn't cut like a clean connection. I cut their connection where they had overlaid the wire to double check that the wire they installed and ran back behind the cylinder head and stuff wasn't like shorted somewhere. So I do this and check, and I'm like, man, I got 7 point something volts coming out of the PCM. Pull the PCM connectors and check for oil and water, make sure something hasn't come up and shorted them. Nothing. I do my best to check other inputs, and I'm just not seeing anything that's causing this. So I call for the module to be replaced. And the code sets as soon as you reset it. Code set criteria is seeing over whatever. You unplug the thing, and I still get a circuit high. I don't get a circuit low or open circuit code. I get the circuit high because it got like 7.9 or something volts coming out of this thing. So I call for a replacement module. Install the replacement module. Program the module. Same problem. I was wrong. Because at this point I knew, I was like, all right, there's no way that I have 2 modules that have the exact same crazy ass problem, right? And I mean, I was straight up just wrong. So I'm doing more research, and the reason why I was wrong was because I didn't follow my own advice, which is follow your diagnostic process every single time. And my diagnostic process involves checking for, and you guys have heard me talk about this, checking service information. And I don't just mean flowchart, because I don't follow flowcharts ever because they seem ridiculous, but I do read through them because sometimes they give you important specifications. But I read through all the service information, but I didn't check for special service messages, rapid response transmittals, or star cases. And at the time, I had a Dealer Connect login for this, which was along with my Tech Authority access. They have since removed Tech Authority access. So I say this because you guys can't do this now unless you have a Dealer Connect login. You can't see star cases for Chrysler. And a star case is basically within the dealer network, they've had this known problem, and it's not big enough of a known problem or doesn't meet the criteria to require them to make a technical service bulletin to release to the public. But it's a problem that's happened enough times that they need to check it out. And this stuff doesn't end up on like All Data or Identifix or whatever. Star cases do not end up on there very often. So, and this may be on like Identifix or something now. I have no clue. I probably should look and see if it is. At the time, I had checked Identifix and stuff for service information. I didn't check it for a silver bullet. I checked it for TSBs and recalls, stuff like that. What I had missed was a star case. And a star case was that the analog to digital voltage converter inside of the PCM has a shared ground circuit between 2 of the converters. One of which is for the voltage conversion piece that goes to the clock spring. And I guess it was a common problem with these, common enough to create a star case, that if the clock spring gets wet in this Jeep, which, it's a Wrangler. It's not like anyone has ever left the top up of a Wrangler, right? And got rain in it or mud or whatever. If there's moisture gets inside the steering column clock spring, it backfeeds voltage to that analog digital converter and will output the voltage out the TPMS wire and give you this error. You'll have sensitive voltage out. So the test is unplug the clock spring connector at the bottom of the steering column. If the voltage goes away, then replace clock spring or damaged circuit within the steering column. And sure enough, I was wrong and unplugged that thing. Bam, 7 volts is gone. Plug it in, cycle the key on, nothing. Steering column connector's unplugged. So I jumper a bunch of the wires, except for the one, to test my theory to make sure it's just the one circuit, the one voltage backfeeding. And sure enough, it was. Cycle the key on, clear the code, everything's good. Throttle position, does full sweep. Key on, engine off. Start the thing up, key on, engine off, no problem. Airbag lights on because steering clock spring is disconnected. So I was wrong. But that was my analog digital converter story. So what it was this information is not shared with us. They don't share internal PCM schematics and PCB board schematics with us for these modules. Even going to Denso or Bosch or Lightens or Jex or whatever module manufacturer it was, they don't give us PCB schematics to see that the analog digital converter shared a ground circuit. Otherwise, I could have come up with that scenario at the point where voltage coming out of the module. I could have pulled the module apart, but I would not have seen any problems physically. Test would have yielded no results, so I would have been like, man, it must just be some kind of corrupt data or something. But anyways, that's my story. Unfortunately, we're not given all the information we need. You guys can't, that I'm aware of, there's no way for aftermarket technicians to get a hold of star cases now, because the Dealer Connect and Tech Authority split. They're separate logins, and Dealer Connect login is only available to dealer technicians, because that's their internal stuff. I mean, used to, I'd be able to log into this stuff, and I could see, like, when the new Dodge Demon, I had this access when the Demon came out, and I got to see the customer questionnaire sheet that they made them sign, saying they won't use these tires on the highway, they won't attempt to install a passenger seat in this vehicle if they purchase the optional $2 option or whatever it was to have the passenger seat removed. It's like this crazy sheet that they had, the customer had to fill out this questionnaire thing where they had to sign initial stuff. They weren't allowed to do certain things with the Demon because it didn't meet X rules for DOT standards and all this stuff. Anyways, that is all the dealer level stuff, the back end dealer stuff. So if there's any Chrysler dealer techs in here, you know what I'm talking about. You log into your Dealer Connect, and there's all the news, and then there's where you can go into Tech Authority, and if you've paid for Tech Authority access, you could type in a code, and then you get kind of like the list of stuff over to the side. Well, with the Dealer Connect access, there's also star cases, and star cases is what I was talking about. So there's my analog to digital voltage converter story. You guys are now you can make fun of me because I misdiagnosed a module. But anyways, it is 1 o'clock Central Standard Time, whatever you want to call it, here in the central part of the United States of America. So I'm out of here, guys. Have fun. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Like, subscribe, comment, do all the things. The thumbs up. When we said the thumbs up earlier, that's the thumbs up like thing on the video. You share the video more often, I get more views. Hopefully more tool guys give me more tools to give away to other people. So see you guys next time. For all the Patreon guys, we'll see you in like 3 hours. So if you are interested in kind of stuff I'm talking about doing, just training with me, I do a weekly training class on Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Keith Perkins. And you will find the training stuff there. You'll have access to all the training content weekly at the, I say it wrong every time, it's the $25 package. I believe it is diagnostician level or higher. You'll have access to the weekly training events, as well as if you sign up in the